Hello. I'm sure you've heard about the decision that was ruled on today in the Supreme Court. I'm going to explain it to you. If I'm being very honest with you, it is a devastating day in terms of the history of civil rights in this country. A tremendous step backwards. I'm going to explain things as usual in a way that you and I can understand. If you are somebody that feels your spirit about to, actually, in the comment section, babe, this video ain't for you. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, okay, is something that essentially said you can't screw with people's ability to vote and be represented. You can't fuck with people's ability to vote based on their race, and you can't fuck with people's ability to have proper representation in the government based on race. That's that part. Here is this part. Congress in the United States is a two-part situation. It is the Senate, it is the House of Representatives. Every state in this nation has 2 senators. Doesn't matter how big or small your state is, you get 2 senators. There are 100 senators. That's it. The House of Representatives, the amount of seats that a state gets in the House of Representatives is determined by their population, how many people live there. So, for example, a state like Alaska has like 1 representative. A state like Texas or California has dozens because they have a significantly larger population. Okay. Gerrymandering is the process of carving up a map that will then translate into how this population is represented. I'm going to show you. Hypothetical, okay? Let's say that this is our state. These circles are different pockets of the population. This state gets 4 seats in the House of Representatives, okay? Based on these here colors, we can see roughly 1/4 of their population, about 25% of the population, votes democratically, okay? If they have 4 seats and about 1/4 of the population votes democratically, one of those seats in a fair world would be a Democrat seat. However, you can divide up or gerrymander, that's the word, a map in a way that will essentially erase the voice, erase the representation of this 25%. Let's look. It's actually a little bit more than 1/4. It would be like 30%. Yeah, like 1/3. 33%. Okay. But it gets 4 seats. So, all right. If you do, let's say you divide it up like this. Republican majority, Republican majority, majority, majority. This is erasing the, oh, you can't really see that. Erasing the 1/3 of Democratic voters in this state. However, if you did something like this, you can at least guarantee that 1 seat will have a Democrat majority. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, what was decided on in the Supreme Court today was specifically the redistricting, the redrawing of the map of Louisiana. Louisiana has 6 seats in the House of Representatives, okay? The entire population of Alabama, roughly 30% is black. Alabama has roughly 30% of its population is black, okay? Therefore, of the 6 seats, it makes sense that those 6 districts that are drawn, 2 of them would have a black majority. because 2 out of 6 would be 30%. It would be a adequate representation, all right? So let's say Louisiana looks something like this. The magenta circles represent the black population. Orange circles represent white population. So 6 districts, boom, boom. It was like this. So the only one that has a black majority is only 1. So that's not, this map and the way it's drawn is not a proper representation of the population of Louisiana. What was proposed was this, essentially, so that you do have 2 districts that are majority black, because that is a reflection on a small scale of the larger population that is the population of Louisiana. Did I say Alabama? I meant it's Louisiana, damn it. What the Supreme Court decided was, no, you can't do that because you're fucking with people's representation and vote representation based on race. Essentially, they are using the same language and laws of civil rights to say, that's racist. Unbelievably insincerely, pure racism, a slap in the face to all civil rights and voting rights progress that has been made in this country. What they basically did, what the Supreme Court did today, was set a precedent that says states, specifically states in the South, so southeast of the United States, can divide up their map in a way that will erase the representation of black and brown people in this country. Horrendous.
Okay, but do y'all actually understand what the Supreme Court just did? Okay, so remember how after slavery ended, they tried everything to stop black folk from using the vote that they just died for? Poll taxes, literary tests, grandfather clauses, bitch, all of it. So in 1965, they passed the Voting Rights Act to say specifically that you cannot do that anymore. That law is the whole reason why black districts exist in the first place. The whole reason why we have black congresspeople at all. Now fast forward to Louisiana. 1/3 of that whole state is black. 1/3. But then when Republicans drew the map for who represents who in Congress, they drew it so that black voters only controlled 1 out of 6 districts. A girl, 1 out of 6. That's illegal. And a court literally told them that's illegal. Fix it. So they fixed it and added a 2nd black district. Then somebody turned around and sued that map, saying that it was a racial gerrymander. And today, the Supreme Court agreed. See, but here's where they got slick, because they said, we didn't kill the Voting Rights Act. We just clarified what it means. But what they meant, what they clarified is that if you want to prove that somebody is diluting your vote, you now have to prove that they meant to do that. Like their purpose, their intention was to dilute your vote. That they meant to do that to you on purpose. And you got to bring receipts. You have to prove it. Girl, do you know how hard that is to prove? Like, these politicians do not put let's suppress black votes in writing. What they will say is something like, we're protecting Republican incumbents. And guess what? Today, the court said if it's partisan, it's legal. Even if it falls entirely on black voters. Even if the results look identical to Jim Crow era maps. Partisan cover is now legal cover. That's it. That's the ruling. And bitch, this is not some abstract future thing. Analysts are already saying this could flip 19 majority-minority seats. That means that this could put white candidates in the 15 seats that are currently being held by black congresspeople. You know when the last time something like that happened? After Reconstruction. When the white folk violently pushed black people out of the government. And that's the comparison that's being made by a Supreme Court justice in her dissent. Because 3 justices pushed back hard against this. Ketanji, because we already know, Kagan, and Sotomayor. And Kagan said, this is what she literally wrote. She said the majority just completed the demolition of the Voting Rights Act. She said a state can now, with 0 legal consequences, systemically dilute the voting power of minority citizens. She called it the biggest rollback of minority representation since Reconstruction. A Supreme Court justice said that in official legal writing, and it still passed 6-3. But here's what needs to be understood, because the news is not going to connect these dots for you. This is not the first time they've done this. That's right. In 2013, they gutted the other part of the Voting Rights Act. The part that made certain states have to get federal permission before they started changing voting rules. States with a documented history of discrimination. Gone. And the minute that happened, voter ID laws exploded. Polling places closed and lines for the voting booth got longer in Black neighborhoods overnight. But today they finished what they started then. Both teeth got pulled today. So the law still exists on paper, but it can't bite now. Florida, Alabama, South Carolina, they were literally waiting on this ruling. Like, they had the new maps ready. Baby, Texas already redrew our map. These states are about to go crazy redrawing their district maps. And there is now almost nothing anybody can do about it in court because you can't prove intent. And even if you could, they'll say it was partisan. Loop closed. No more loophole. So the next time somebody tells y'all, oh, just go vote, like it fixes everything, please understand what happened today. They are currently engineering the maps so that they will function in a way that your vote will count and matter less than it already does when you do show up. This is not paranoia. This is a 6-3 Supreme Court ruling that came down today. Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. Baby, this is the bad place.
Guys, my name is Mirabelle and you are welcome to my channel. So today, we need to talk. Because what just happened in America is not small. This is one of those moments that people will look back at years from now and say, yeah, that was when things really started going backwards. We're talking about voting rights. We're talking about representation. And we're talking about how, in 2026, something that was already fought for back in the 1960s is somehow still being undone today. Because the U.S. Supreme Court just made a decision about Louisiana's voting map, and a lot of people are calling it a direct attack on civil rights. And when you actually break it down, it starts to look less like law and more like strategy. Let's watch what people are saying. So here's the situation in simple terms. Louisiana has 6 seats in Congress. Now, about 30% of the people living there are Black. Logically, if representation was fair, you'd expect around 2 out of those 6 districts to give Black voters a real chance to elect someone who represents them. Not special treatment. Not favoritism. Just basic math. And that's exactly what civil rights groups were pushing for, a map with 2 majority Black districts. Simple. But the problem starts with something called gerrymandering, which is basically when politicians draw voting maps in a very creative way to control outcomes. Instead of grouping communities fairly, they slice them up. Split them. Scatter them. So even if a group is large, their voting power gets diluted. And this is where the Voting Rights Act of 1965 comes in. That law was created to stop exactly this kind of thing. It literally says you cannot mess with people's ability to vote or be represented because of their race. So naturally, you would think, okay, easy decision, right? Wrong. Because the court basically said, creating that second majority Black district would be too focused on race. Let that sink in. They're saying trying to fix racial imbalance is the real problem. So now we're in this very strange situation where the same language that was originally used to protect Black voters is now being used to block them from gaining fair representation. And that's why people are angry. Because it feels very intentional. Think about it like this. If 30% of a state is Black, but only 1 out of 6 districts reflects that population, then something is already off. That's not neutral. That's not accidental. That's design. And when someone tries to correct it, and the system says no, that correction is racist. Then what exactly are we doing here? Because at that point, it's not about being colorblind. It's about ignoring reality.
Supreme Court dismantles the Voting Rights Act Section 2, and where's the outrage? When Renee Good and Alex Preddy were shot and killed, we were there, showing our support, showing our disdain. We donated, protested, yelled, made content, talked about it, called our representatives, did all the work. And now we've had something major taken away from us. Silence. I mean fucking crickets. Leftists prove to me over and over and over again why they can't be trusted no more than MAGA. Where's the calls to action? Where's the calls to call your representative, what we can do to SCOTUS to take this down and reverse it? Here's the call for strikes and protests and no King's Day for us. Oh, that's right. When it happens to us, anyway. Damn, that's fucked up. Oh well, my opinion now, it's all performative. You don't really care about the community. You only care when it touches you. You all helped put us in this position, and now we're here, and there's no turning back. I can't fuck with any of you. If you're a leftist, fuck you.
Today is one of the darkest days in the history of civil rights in the United States, as the Supreme Court has just eviscerated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in a 6-3 decision. Because of this decision, by 2028, Black Americans and Latino Americans are going to lose a significant amount of representation in Congress and in state legislatures. I would not be surprised if this is what the map looks like by 2028, where Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina have no more majority Black districts, and there are significantly fewer in Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida. This decision revolves around this map in Louisiana, which the Supreme Court struck down as an illegal racial gerrymander because they drew 2 Black majority districts in Louisiana. The Supreme Court basically said you can no longer use race to draw districts, but you can use partisanship. And because of how voting patterns, race and partisanship are almost the same things in the South, they are a distinction without a difference. And so while Republicans will say they drew these maps without using race, they clearly did, because blacks do not form a majority in any of them. And when they split Memphis into 3 pieces and New Orleans into 3 pieces, they were using race and partisanship. And Democrats must be ruthless in response. We can draw maps like this now in California because the VRA is essentially gutted. We need to move to do this in 2028 and let Republicans know if they eliminate Black representation in the South, we will counter and eliminate all Republicans in states like California, Illinois, and Colorado. Now is not the time to be timid. We must come out and immediately let Republicans know that if they proceed with racially gerrymandering the South to eliminate all Black Democrats, essentially, we are going to respond in force, and we are going to pass an amendment in New York to be able to redistrict there, and we will eliminate all Republicans in many, many blue states if they move forward with these racist gerrymanders across the South.
If you're white and you think the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act doesn't affect you, think again. Because that instinct that this is someone else's problem, that it won't affect me, just them, is how we ended up here. Exactly. What actually happened was the Supreme Court didn't just weaken the Voting Rights Act for voters of color. They dismantled the enforcement mechanism that makes your vote, your white vote, mean something too. Because the truth about voter suppression is that nobody says this part out loud. It's that it's never about race. It's always been about power, the big guy versus the little guy. Make no mistake, this decision means fewer voting places. Guess what? That's your rural white county too. Stricter ID laws, that's your elderly mother who doesn't drive and doesn't have a passport. Purged voter rolls, that's your kid who moved home from college. Early voting cuts, that's you working 2 jobs trying to get to the polls on a Tuesday before they close. The architecture of suppression doesn't check your skin color at the door. It checks your income, your zip code, whether you have the flexibility in your schedule, whether you can afford to wait in a 4-hour line. They gut the Voting Rights Act, and what they really gut is the guardrail, the legal infrastructure that allows anyone to challenge a law designed to make voting harder. Without it, state legislatures move faster. They can redistrict with less scrutiny, with the primary goal being to steal our elections and take away our democracy. They can close polling locations in working class neighborhoods, all working class neighborhoods. This is not abstract. This is your school board, your water quality, your hospital staying open, your sheriff, your state legislature drawing the maps that decide whether your vote is competitive ever again. The Voting Rights Act was not now or ever was a Black gift. It was an American promise, written in blood, in Selma on a bridge, by people who understood that democracy is not self-executing. Someone has to guard it. And if you've been sitting on the sidelines thinking this fight wasn't yours because you're white, you are wrong. They're coming for you too. Stay steady, eyes open, guard the Republic.
Other breaking news. I can tell you, as a Black woman, that my father was born in 1949. He remembers segregated schools. He remembers segregated water fountains. He remembers that he did not have full civil rights. And he told me when I turned 40 years old that I was the first person in his family to enjoy full civil rights. And he is still alive today, and I am still alive today, and I have been discriminated against. And now I have to tell my children that they have less civil rights than I did when I was born.
That's true.
That is disgusting, despicable, and I am devastated by this particular Supreme Court decision, even though we did know this was coming.
And let's be honest, this doesn't happen in isolation. We've seen similar battles in other southern states. Same arguments. Same outcomes. Same pattern. And the bigger concern is what this decision means going forward. Because if this becomes the standard, then states can continue drawing maps that weaken black and brown voting power, and defend it by saying, well, we're just not using race. Meanwhile, the result still looks the same. Less representation. Less voice. Less power. So when people say this is a step backwards, they're not exaggerating. It's not just about Louisiana. It's about the message it sends. That even when the numbers are clear, even when the history is known, even when the law was literally created for this exact issue, it can still be reinterpreted in a way that changes everything. And that's where the frustration comes from. At the end of the day, this is bigger than politics. This is about who gets to be heard, and who gets quietly pushed to the side. Because representation is not just a concept, it affects real decisions, real policies, and real lives. So when that representation is reduced, controlled, or reshaped, people notice. Anyway guys, let me know what you think about this situation in the comments. Do you think this was about fairness, or something else entirely? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.